Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another recording of Hearthstone. Today is Wednesday, September 4th. We're on the Asian account. A lot of news going on. Let's re-roll this, although we're not going to do the Tavern Brawl. So that pretty much means I have to get these two done until Friday. Or I could maybe do one Tavern Brawl, because you just have to play a Tavern Brawl. You don't have to really win a Tavern Brawl. So it probably would be a little bit safer just to do that. But I'm not going to go the full route. So if I win this first Tavern Brawl, which I should, fine. If I lose, fine.
A dark conspirator has crossed my path. Something is.
This is a weird Tavern Brawl. It's definitely designed to push you to get hyped for the new expansion, the single player expansion. But you only get to play as Elise the Enlightened. You're going to fight 5 bosses, and I struggled against the first boss, the second boss, and the 5th boss, and didn't really struggle with anything else. I'm gonna take this, hold on to that one. It is rather nice. I want to mention that to have fixed my fan problem, my wires touching the fan of my GTX 970 and making loud noises. It is now super quiet. I also turned everything to silent mode. Now, does that mean I might run into performance issues? Maybe, but what I'm hoping will happen is being in silent mode doesn't stop it from doing 100% fan when it needs 100% fan. It just allows it to go to 0% of fan speed if it's just sitting around doing nothing, which often my computer is just kind of doing nothing, or maybe not 0%, but as close to 0%. So maybe it will do just 20% fan speed instead of 100%. Like, I could customize these numbers, but I don't frankly know what I'm doing, so going with the default profiles is fine by me. I do need to take a moment at some point and resample the noise in my recording software. I don't know if it actually uses a noise profile sample, or if it's just I had my room quiet and then put a noise gate so that it would turn everything down below a certain level of decibels. But yeah, I imagine having changed the fan that was in the power supply unit and added a whole new video card. There are 4 new fans in there that potentially have changed how things work. Moving on to news, because we still got plenty of news here. TechRaptor has an article here. Tetris 99 is getting free and paid DLC in a physical edition September 6th. I imagine people who really love Tetris are still playing Tetris 99, and that there is a decent number of people that drop in and drop out of playing Tetris 99. But I imagine if you don't love Tetris 99, you're probably not spending much time on it. They're announcing it as version 2.0. So Tetris 99 was the free to start game that caused some waves when it first came out. Is there anything else to say about Tetris 99? There was something I was thinking about, but I think I probably lost the plot on it. Oh, I wanted to mention, like, as I am getting closer and closer to being done with Clash Royale, Tetris 99 for me would be a lot like that, where it gives you these daily quests and these requirements that I really wouldn't want to have.
Devour this bird.
Yeah, more and more I'm not doing even the even one game on a daily basis. I'm trying to stick with the clan, but twice now in the past 30 days I've not done a clan day, any clan war. I'm really falling out of love with it. In all honesty, had been out of love with Clash Royale for a long time, but I was the co-leader of the previous clan, so that kept me involved. Now that I'm no longer a co-leader of a clan and really don't have any desire or interest to do that, there's less reason for me to stick around. Clash Royale has definitely also changed how it plays, so they've kind of made it worse than it was. More greedy. Alright. Are we trying to do some priest cards?
Beetleberries, my
Just play
favorite.
cards.
Got one.
And then
Tell me the truth.
The League of Evil will crush you.
The League of what?
so there's 2 card packs we'll get early, and we'll come back on Friday and do the rest of that Tavern Brawl. Meanwhile, we'll just focus on destroying minions and playing priest cards for the European account. I think that will work well. Might as well play ranked. Tech Raptor has another article here. Little Town Hero finally takes a stand October 16th. I've never heard of this game, but it's from Game Freak, the developers of most of the Pokemon games. And you can see it has a Ghibli-esque animation style to it, and probably is a different kind of RPG, trying to go in many different directions, I suppose, far away from Pokemon, because I'm sure Game Freak is more than tired of making Pokemon games. I don't know if there is a game company out there that has been more of a victim of their own success than Game Freak. There's been a few out there, certainly, though, that had very successful games, and then that's all anybody wants them to make, to their own consternation. Let's see. Well, I guess I can't really do anything, so I'll just end the turn. Move on. Next, we have a Gamatsu article, Brigadine, the Legend of Runercia. Runercia has been announced for Switch. I've never heard of this game. From Happy Net Games, I've never heard of that company either. Do we have a trailer to look at? Looks like it's a hex grid based fighting strategy game. RPG. Yeah, we had this Switch Direct, and apparently, depending on whether you were Japanese or not, you took some rather different news from it. A lot of animation here hiding what the game actually is. Yeah, this is what the actual game is hex grid strategy RPG game. Looks as good as several other games I've heard of that. I've seen similar to that. Let's start by silencing the minion. This next article is a little bit of a surprise. TechRaptor has an article here. Overwatch is coming to the Nintendo Switch this October. I really wouldn't have thought Overwatch would have made it to a portable console in particular, but it's also a little surprised that Overwatch didn't come to the PS4 or the Xbox. Unless I'm just totally wrong about that. Did Overwatch make it to PS4 and Xbox One? I guess it makes more sense if they were just going to make a Switch version to try to get more kids to play it. Is Fortnite on the Switch? I don't think it is either, but it might be. Yeah, I'm so out of the loop. Clearly, like I don't even know if Fortnite's on the Switch, but it probably should be. I'm pretty sure Fortnite's on PS4 and the Xbox One. And if I had more time, I guess I'd do some research and see if Overwatch is on other consoles. Let's see, Overwatch.
I wonder.
Let's see. Overwatch. Overwatch Wikipedia. Okay. What platforms is it on? Overwatch is on Microsoft Windows, PS4, and Xbox One and Switch. So it is on the consoles already. I just have been completely out of the loop.
Your magic shall not save you. Not too quickly.
There you go, I'm just ruining his strategies. So it's a little less surprising to people in the know, I would guess, that yes, Overwatch is on other consoles, and coming to the Switch is just the next step of that. Let's see.
Die, mage.
Turn there. TechRaptor has an article here. Nintendo reveals new levels and mode for Luigi's Mansion 3. Which, okay, if you're gonna play Luigi's Mansion, that's information that'd be interesting. Gamatsu has the same article. Doom 64 coming to the Switch November 22nd. For anybody interested in that. Trying to get through all the Nintendo Direct stuff because there's other news. There's plenty of other news, certainly. Gamatsu has an article. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate DLC character is Banjo and Kazooie launches today. Also, Terry Bogard from Fatal Fury launches in November. I believe there's also a Banjo Kazooie level, but I might be wrong about that. Right. So, yeah, and some new Mii fighter costumes, I guess, too. Yep. Nintendo Super Smash Bros. Is continuing to do its thing.
Your rage sustains me.
It's just I guess we're just trying to play priest cards while we're here and kill minions. That's all we really need to do. Gamatsu has an article here for the Switch. The game that was called Town unofficially is now officially titled Little Town Hero and launches October 16th. This is that same game that we saw before with a different screenshot, which it's nice to see different screenshots. Do they have a video here? I'd like to know maybe a little bit more about this Little Town Hero game. It does have kind of a Ghibli-esque animation on top of almost a Zelda looking game with a little bit of Monster Hunter in it too. So it's taking several different inspirations to go in a different way. We'll see how well that really works and whether Little Town Hero turns out to be the next iteration, because that's really what it has to be. It has to be the next iteration of Pokemon without the Pokemon label, or it's going to be basically nothing that anybody likes. Alright, let's see. Somebody's on the chat and I'm trying to zoom in so I could actually read it. Come on. Alright. Well, we have a Mauricio, I guess. Mauricio
I wonder what this
Montez, I believe is how you pronounce that. Says hey back on the chat. I'm gonna blame an inability to read the tiny text if I mispronounced your name.
Well played.
Now, logically, right now we would be trying to get up ranked at the beginning of the month, but I've had a pretty long journey and a pretty open journey about falling out of love with Hearthstone too, so at this point I kind of don't care if I make it up in ranked or not, particularly on the European account. I just want to get the daily quest done and get the news done. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article. Return of the Obra Dinn is coming to Switch this fall. It'll be interesting to see how well the graphics work for the Return of the Obra Dinn on that smaller monitor, because you will have a very specific LCD monitor at a lower resolution, whereas the graphics, like, just that look like this in stationary but look way better when moving around, like, those graphics could suffer majorly. I would also argue that there's a decent disconnect between people who would play Return of the Obra Dinn, which was a PC exclusive game I believe originally, and people and kids who play the Switch, because Obra Dinn is a very visual mystery deduction game that even some adult players had trouble figuring out all the solutions to. And in fact, some of the solutions felt particularly so specific that it was unlikely that a lot of people would be able to do them at all. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a few stories that pop up where some parent buys Return to Obra Dinn for their kid, and their kid is super unsatisfied with that because they can't get anywhere. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article for the PC, PS4, and Switch. First, like, PC Nintendo Direct announcement, and they come out. Trials of Mana launches April 24th, 2020. It is a remake of Seiken Densetsu 3. Okay. I'm probably should try to get all of the Mana series, Secret of Mana, and I don't even know what the second game is called. It's Secret of Mana, but Secret of Mana I think is actually Seiken Densetsu 2, and then there's another game. There's a lot of backstory to it, because these were going to originally, I believe, be Final Fantasy games, and they didn't get the official Final Fantasy label on them. Remember, right now my main goal is to play priest cards and kill minions, so I'm going to try and do that. It's still in a weird position though, as far as me dancing around and trying to think what are the top 10 RPGs or Japanese RPGs in particular to play. I don't know where the Mana trilogy would come into that setup. Like, these are very relevant very impactful old RPG games, JRPGs, but do I really need to play the Mana series? Do I really need to play the Chrono Trigger series? Do you play Chrono Trigger or the Mana series first? Do you play Final Fantasy first, or do you wait for Final Fantasy to be the last series you play?
The light shall bring victory.
I've got to really limit my time, particularly for these genres, because these genres are so incredibly long per game, and none of them do a great job of catching my attention, because what happens is, if it is a mainstream popular JRPG, it's probably not some weird anime JRPG with a bunch of anime looking characters in it, and it's probably designed to appeal to the masses as much as possible, so there's nothing too intriguing about it or too unique about it. So like I would have a real hard time justifying playing Final Fantasy 1, 2, or 3, for instance, because I'm fairly certain those games would be boring.
Your rage sustains me.
Let's see. Gamatsu has the same article. Overwatch is coming to the Switch on October 15th. I still kind of feel like Overwatch is beginning to see the end of its heyday. It will have a consistent player fan base that just slowly gets smaller and smaller, but I don't think it's gonna have the long life of something like Counter-Strike Go, which, let's face it, skin trading certainly made Counter-Strike Go survive well past a point where it likely would have otherwise. But yeah, I imagine there's not too much there. We are hitting the point where things that came out a couple years ago, like Overwatch or Rocket League, have had their fill. They've had their coverage, and you really can't do anything more with them. Moving on, Game of Sutra has an article here. The Ghostwire Tokyo creative director Ikumi Nakamura has departed Tango Gameworks. This is this lady who everybody immediately fell in love with when she showed up on stage at E3.
I'm out of
Let's
cards.
see. So she'd been working with the Evil Within developer and his parent company ZeniMax for 9 years. She joined the year it was founded, and she started just 1 month before it was acquired by ZeniMax. So ZeniMax, not really a company you want to work for. So I could understand why she'd want to leave. The quote here is, "For several years I've been doing my best to create the Ghostwire Tokyo, which I felt like my child." Ghostwire Tokyo, I think, being the game that's next coming out. "I've decided to proceed to the new world. I can keep myself happy. I've also decided to proceed to the new world." No period in that quote. "I can keep myself happy, and somebody required me." This is being translated from Japanese, of course, so that could explain the lack of punctuation. "Now the huge world is showing me infinite possibilities, like an open world video game. Life is not linear," which I assume this is a translation reference to some of the titles of the Neon Genesis reboot. So it sounds like she got a better deal somewhere else, and good for her. Yeah, working for ZeniMax is not fun, from what I would guess. I have no idea. Prior to her work as the creative director of Ghostwire Tokyo, Nakamura provided artistic support through character, enemy, and environment, and logo design on The Evil Within. Okay, that mostly was good work. And so she served as the art director for the game's DLC and continued worked on the series as a concept artist for The Evil Within 2. Well, The Evil Within 2 also went in a very different direction. A very different direction than Evil Within 1, and I think a better direction, so maybe she wasn't as fully involved or on board with the changes there. The Evil Within, I think, is supposed to be the spiritual successor to Resident Evil 4, maybe particularly Resident Evil 4.
Is someone injured?
I think it gets that claim because one person that worked on Resident Evil 4 worked on Evil Within, but I don't know if that's an accurate claim. Here's her tweet, which is different. I felt here one of the ends of my journeys. I learned the talented people I worked with and I respect. Contact me if anybody wants to work with me. And then here's a picture that looks like it's been animated, photoshopped, or at least has a filter put over it. So ZeniMax definitely lost a person who caught a lot of people's attention for being cute looking on stage. I don't know how much talent was really lost, and we really won't know that until we see some claim that Ghostwire Tokyo is Warsoft because she's not working on it anymore. It could also be that Ghostwire Tokyo is really, really close to being done and they didn't need a creative director anymore, but that's weird. You really wouldn't get rid of a creative director on a game until at least the game was out. I feel like Ghostwire Tokyo is probably still well into development, so it might look like a completely different game next time you see it.
Job's done.
But I hope her the best, and I hope that she moves on to something else. The ScumVM team has put out a latest blog saying that they now support a new game called Hyperspace Delivery Boy. All known versions are supported, including Linux, Windows, and Pocket PC. Wow, I'd forgotten that the ScumVM actually was supporting Pocket PC programs. Most people probably forgot Pocket PC programs even existed. And this is one of John Romero's creations. So John Romero being, I think, the guy who made Doom, or one of the guys who made Doom. So that'll be interesting, to say the least. To see if that game gets sold or put on Steam. Moving on, Gamasutra has an article here. Steam's library redesign ushers in new features for devs alongside spruced up game pages. Yeah, we could see some major improvements with the Steam redesign that might, and I stress might, make game developers a lot more happy and a lot more efficient as far as presenting their games the right way and making consumers happy about the way games are presented too, which is another consideration certainly to take into. The article goes on to say better discovery is a primary focus for the redesigns, both in players' own game libraries and the Steam store itself. At the same time, Valve also talked about plans for the future regarding Steamworks and Steam Labs, along with how the team is working with alongside developers and community feedback to further develop both sections. The most obvious thing will be
Your magic shall not save you.
this. The most obvious change is this is what the library is going to try to be like when you're looking at
Your
the
magic shall
tile
not save you.
setup with a lot more filters, although this is a very blurry image, a lot more checkboxes, and vertical logos that look like cover art from a game box instead of more square tiles that really weren't in line with what is an industry standard. So that things will look differently. It'll be slightly more interesting to do some stuff, although I think some stuff also will still have some major problems if you have a lot of games. And that'll be the case for me, as I still will just have a lot of games, and
Die, mage.
very little will change that or make it easier for me personally to organize games. I'm not doing terrible keeping my games organized though. Ability to drag and drop games into collections, which used to be called categories, will make it easier to organize. New post-game summaries, telling you, I guess, how long you played and how well you did, if they have that information. It's quite frankly not even really a lot of information you need to cover right now though, because when the new Steam interface launches, the Steam interface will just launch and then you can see it yourself, and I imagine there will be several features that you don't even recognize are new features or you don't even find. So there might be some articles that come out and say, hey, here's the new Steam interface and here's where you can do this, this, and this. But you barely even get that for like things like Windows these days. It used to be the case if you were in IT and you were seeing major differences between Windows 95 and Windows ME or Windows like 2K, Windows 2000, like those were all very different operating systems where you could read a different article every week telling you some new feature that's been hidden. Even to this day, I find little things here and there about Windows 10 that are different, or you can do something 5 different ways, or you can do something that's seems like it's almost the same thing that you used to be able to do, or almost like the same thing that you can do somewhere else, but it's slightly different. You can, like, when you go to Windows 10 options to adjust display settings, there's way different settings than what you go to when you have just the old style control panel display settings.
Your soul shall be mine.
Moving on though, Gematsu has the same article. Ghostwire Tokyo's creative director Ikumi Nakamura has left Tengo Gameworks. Not anything really different being said here. Quitting a job after 9 years, I would say, is a little weird. You might as well try to get to the 10, because 10 sounds a lot better than 9. I also briefly, totally out of the loop here, heard or saw a video that one of the, I guess, original founders of Inside Gaming / Funhouse, which, like, I don't think I maybe was watching Inside Gaming for a short time, but I don't think I ever watched Funhouse, which is owned by Rooster Teeth. He's like leaving. He was on the sabbatical for a month, saying he wasn't leaving apparently, and then he came back from the sabbatical and said he was leaving, and he said, oh yeah, he had already given us notice before he left, and they said, well, why don't you take a month sabbatical and think about it, which is a weird way to do business, certainly. I guess that means they really didn't want to lose him, but I think by the time you make that commitment and say out loud you're leaving, you're definitely leaving, and giving a month sabbatical doesn't likely have a change. I would be very interested to hear if that ever has worked anywhere. Like that would be very surprising if that's ever helped you maintain an employee you actually wanted to keep. But yeah, I was totally out of the loop of that, and I'm like, okay, well, that's happening. I don't even know if that's really video game related. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Super Sketch Bump. Now, a lot of these games that I opened up I didn't vet, so the first group of games that we start looking at will probably be low effort, ugly looking games like this one. This one is medium on the scale of low effort, ugly looking games. It does have enemies, it does have gameplay, but it seems like it is mostly just a platformer with MS Paint graphics. Early access for $12.74. They've totally priced themselves out of the list. 30 achievements makes it seem like an achievement game, and it claims English full audio, so that's not making it to the follow list, of course. Let's see. But yeah, once we get through these kinds of games, we'll start getting through some of the games that were left over from Friday, and those will be more curated experiences because I kind of double curated them at this point. Next we have Threat Gen Red vs. Blue. Anything with Red vs. Blue is probably trying to create name confusion with that old, I don't even think it was originally a YouTube series of Halo characters, red and blue, fighting each other. That being said, this does not look like a game of any interest to me. $29.99 English full audio with a third-party end-user license agreement. Yeah, nothing impressive with that. Let's see.
Whispers.
Job's done.
Let's see. See if this next game is something I can show. TechRaptor has an article. I can't show it, so TechRaptor has an agreement to promote all of Nutaku's games. So the newest game is called Sin VR, and you can play it for free. It's pretty much a VR sex simulator.
Shields up.
And you could read their article if you're interested there. I still don't feel like Nutaku is making great sex games, but I will fully admit I'm not sure that you really need to make great sex games ever in any scenario. It's kind of the porn model in a lot of ways. You don't really need to make the best porn ever. You don't need to make the Citizen Kane of porn. You just need to make something that accomplishes its goal of tittillating and is cheap enough that you can make more and add more variety, because there's always a demand for more variety, believe it or not. Like there are those whales, for lack of a better term, that are spending every waking moment of their life, and probably to their own detriment, looking at porn.
Your rage
and there's so much variety for taste too, that you have to make so much variety. So that's the model they're doing. Is just every month they have a couple new games, and it works well enough. Next we have a game here called Clash Grid VR, which looks like it's kind of a parkour, I don't know what you call that, soccer using your hands, football using your hands, game, rugby, it's not really rugby, disc golf, perhaps. I don't know what the best equivalent game would be. The problem with this game is that it is just non-textured, so you have these 3D polygonal grid people, and it's a VR game. $6.99, which is really cheap for a VR game. English full audio, allegedly. I'm pretty much saying that for every bad game that says it has English full audio. I think my definition of full audio is different than what a lot of people think full audio means.
She's here. She's here.
So yeah, Clash Grid actually prices itself too low for a VR game, and that's another tick against it, but it is also just not visually interesting. Gamatsu has an article here. For the Switch, Puzzle Quest: The Legend Returns has been announced, which would be a next chapter in the Match 3 RPG series, which is interesting because I'm not sure all of the Puzzle Quest games have been released either through the eShop or such. I question whether I should play Puzzle Quest as probably the most successful Match 3 series of games on Steam. There is also, I guess, a good argument to be said that Puzzle Quest puts a lot of effort into it, and on the Switch in particular, having that mobile factor to it, you could play this really well. 280 puzzles in this newest version means if you just did one puzzle a day, it probably would take you a year, assuming you take some days off to play the entire game, and there probably would be a new Puzzle Quest out before a year happens. So that, for me as a PC gamer, adds some relevancy to the idea of playing Puzzle Quest. Like, it might be on my shopping list now, next time there's a sale for games. Although, frankly, having just spent like $500 on a new video card, I don't think my shopping list is gonna get checked out. I don't think I'm buying any games next sales, or very, very few games. Maybe $100 worth, depending on what they're even doing. Some of the Steam sales up in the past year in particular haven't been doing anything with trading cards or given any like really good reason why I would want to buy games at that time. So without that extra bonus of getting trading cards or something, that would have been a great point to just say no, I don't need to buy any more games. Moving on, Gamma Sutra has this article. The UK IE has launched a diversity census to analyze the shape of the UK games industry. This is something I guess you could try to, if you're in the UK, be a part of and try to give them true and accurate information. Although I feel like there is probably a bias here. Like, it's being supported by diversity advocates such as POC in Play and Women in Games. So I wouldn't be surprised unless the UK IE is so independent and so resolute I wouldn't be surprised if they altered their results to make it look like there's less minorities playing games than there are. When my understanding is there's probably as many people are in the UK, there's probably a close to equal percentage of those people that play video games of some sort. Some factors will probably affect that. I could imagine minorities having a unbalanced amount of income, thus they play a little bit less games, but they probably play some games. People's taste per country don't change too much, particularly a small country like the UK. The people's taste in like the United States, we're a huge landmass, so physically just going from one side of the country to the other might show some changes in taste, but not by much really. And games, video games in particular, are designed to be pretty popular around the world, so there's no reason why people wouldn't be playing them.
Let's have some fun.
The light shall bring victory.
But yeah, I guess the only thing you can do with that is prepare to denounce some biased results and contribute your own true and accurate information if you are someone in the area that they actually want to survey. The best thing for a survey like this, which is probably biased from the out-go, I mean, their goal is to show that it's not as diverse as they want it to be, because SJWs in general want equity. They want it to be 50% of all minorities play video games compared to the majority, which is just the white male guy.
Is someone injured?
But that won't work because there's way more white guys in the UK than there are minority people. So it would have to be horribly unbalanced to the point where white guys weren't allowed to play video games to get equity. Whereas the goal that people should be going for is equality, where if 20% of a population is a minority, then 20% of that population should play whatever percentage of that 20% of that population that should play video games should be equal to the other 80% percentage. So if half of everybody plays video games, the 20% that are minorities should then be half of that 20%. So 10% of minorities play games, and then the majority, let's just to keep it simple, is 80%. Half of the majority plays video games. That should be 40%. And yeah, math is hard and easy to manipulate and easy for people to not want to deal with as far as all of that, but always important to know the difference between equality and equity and understand why you would ask for equality or in some places and equity in some other places. And then also, on a bigger note, understand what equal opportunity means too. It's working at a video game company as anybody is not particularly the best programming job you could get if you're a programmer. So if it is equal opportunity, if everybody is given the opportunity to work at a video game company, but only males decide to work at the video game company because they love video games so much, and females are, frankly, let's put it straight, smarter than most males and realize, oh, it's not worth the work and I could go work somewhere else and get paid more and treated better, well, that's equal opportunity. It's not an equal outcome. It's not equity, which is often what people complain about, but everybody was allowed to apply at the job They weren't, their gender was not considered when they were hired. They weren't in any way asked to leave or fired when they after they were found out to be a certain gender. You really can't do more than equal opportunity. Of course, equal opportunity also is a phrase that can be manipulated, because if you're doing separate but equal and then calling it equal opportunity and you're doing segregation, you're not really doing equal opportunity. There's no way you ever could. Moving on though, because that's turning into an rant. TechRaptor has an article here. Studio MDHR announces a Cuphead novel from the other things Cuphead has licensed its thing to. They're doing a good job to milk Cuphead for as much as they can. The question here will be like,
I wonder.
how long can they continue to milk Cuphead before people realize, oh, they're never gonna get around to making anything of interest as far as a Cuphead 2, which I don't believe that's the case yet, but I think there is a good chance that they might just get distracted and never make a Cuphead 2, and they may get distracted and never make another good video game. Apparently this Cuphead novel is for young readers. It's 272 pages, so clearly not that young readers, and it has only 20 illustrations, so it really is a novel for $14.99. I don't know what they're trying to do there. Why? It seems like they don't know their own audience, because young kids are not going to be able to succeed and play Cuphead. They just aren't. It's too difficult a game. Let's just keep on playing cards. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Google Stadia looks and feels good, according to them, which is nice. It's worth mentioning, though, that the Google Stadia is kind of in this beta early access that you have to pay for the first year when it launches in November. So you're not even going to have a free try it out demo experience until a year worth of bug fixing, which might work, might not, but Google is kind of advertising it like it's launching in November when really it's going into beta in November. I would also highly warn against getting in bed with Google ever again for anybody, because Google, as far as I'm concerned, is just as bad as their subsidiary YouTube. So I wouldn't be surprised if they abandon Stadia a couple of years in, and I wouldn't be surprised if they change the terms of the deal very quickly and make it worse and worse. Moving on, Gamma Sutra has an article too. Same article. Steam Library redesign ushers new features. I think this actually is the exact same article that we already talked about. So, duplicate tab. I'm not super surprised about that. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Mental House, which looks like another one of these horror games, asset flip horror games, that frankly at this point are closer to trolls than actual games, depending on the quality of the assets they purchase. And the standard dark screenshot syndrome, screenshots with no enemies. $16.14 discounted, way too expensive. Claims of full audio support for not only English, French, German, Spain, Spanish, Korean, and Polish, Portuguese, Russian, Turkish, Japanese, and Chinese, with 2 achievements, which makes it seem like an achievement game. too. That is
I must consider.
a huge claim there, and a great example of just a lack of curation and a lack of accuracy checking as far as what games claim to have in them.
Job's done.
You shouldn't be able to call something full audio if you don't have actual dialogue in your game in that language, because that makes no sense. Like, if the game is that nobody ever speaks any legible known language, then you don't have full English in it, full audio English. You just don't. On the other hand, if you were playing a game and you spoke one word of English and then the rest of it was in Chinese, you still don't have full English audio support. So there's really no way you spin it until you have the entire game translated into that specific language. That's the only time you should be able to say you have full English audio, is when it's 100% all in English, with a small exception of some third-party character saying some offhanded comment in some other language. 90% of the game would have to be in English, or I don't mind you maybe subtitling one or two characters, but that's about it. And before we wrap up this recording, we'll look at this one last game and then we'll go over to the Asian account. We have Remy Lore, Lost Girl of the Lands of Lore. This looks like it is... I feel like this is a game that would have been on the follow list. It looks like it's a roguelike according to tags. Top-down JRPG game from Nicholas, which I think Nicholas published Super Meat Boy. It's caught my attention because it's got, well, the anime art style first of all, but it's got a lot of polish on the UI. It might be something kind of like a top-down twin-stick Binding of Isaac type game. We're seeing some variety in the areas you're standing, different tile sets, different enemies. So I'm going to put this on the follow list. That being said, it is very expensive, so this would be a game I would not buy until it's on sale heavily. $35.99. English full audio, something I actually believe is true. This might be one of those Japanese games that is super difficult too. It might be a frustration game. So let's see. Yeah, Nicholas last put out Crystal Crisis and Blade Strangers, and let's see what else. 1001 Spikes, not a game I wanted to play, but certainly I saw other people. Cave Story. I guess they didn't publish Super Meat Boy. Interesting. I've just heard of their name. So they have some level of recognizability. So yeah. That should go on the follow list. And if I reload this page, it is on the follow list. Okay. So that'll be the last game we look at here for this recording, and then we'll go and do an Asian account recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description box. And if you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.